Tonight, the day after the summit that led many Americans to question the loyalty of our own president, well, Donald Trump tries to walk back the disastrous comments in Helsinki. The question is, did he go far enough to take him off the national hot seat? Plus, the reaction. Views of the summit went far beyond the typical partisan positions that we're so used to. We're going to show you the criticism of lawmakers, of the world's press, and even from Fox News. Plus, we're going to open up our phone lines to you so you can sound off. And later, to put yesterday in proper perspective, we need to know more about this guy, Vladimir Putin. What he wants, what he gained from President Trump yesterday. Our Russia expert joins us to set the record straight. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you for joining us for what promises to be a busy Tuesday night. Well, we will spend much of this hour looking back on Trump's disastrous summit yesterday in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin. But first, breaking news as once again, corruption in New York grabs the headlines. Dean SKELOS, former president of the New York State Senate and one of the so-called three men in the room who all but ran New York State for years, convicted, along with his son Adam, once again on federal bribery and extortion charges. The jury found SKELOS used his office and influence to secure $300,000 worth of no-show or low-show jobs for his son, some of which was caught on federal wiretaps. This, the second trial for the SKELOSes, the first overturned on appeal. SKELOS took the stand in his own defense this time around. The result, though, the same, both men guilty on all 8 counts. We're going to have much more on the convictions, including complete report from our own Dominic Carter, who is at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan later on this program. But now we go to the fallout from yesterday's hard-to-fathom performance by President Trump. That as his summit with Vladimir Putin, a summit Trump asked for in a March phone call with a Russian premier. Now, by now, you've probably seen the clips and the slack-jawed reaction from everyone, including the president's own men. The president rejecting the conclusions of his own intelligence agencies that it was Russia who interfered with our elections, and he chose to accept Putin's denials instead, noting he couldn't see a reason why Russia would do something like that. Trump also relitigated the 2016 election on foreign soil, praising a Putin suggestion that Russian agents question agents within the FBI and the CIA. He also appeared to show so much deference to Putin, he almost seemed weak on the stage next to him. Well, today, the White House and the president himself, almost dragging, kicking, and screaming, tried to put the pin back in the grenade, as the rest of Washington, Republicans and Democrats, collectively shook their heads and wagged their fingers, and some worse than that. They waited to see what would happen next. It was a moment that caused outrage. President Trump today attempting to offer a clarification.
I have full faith and support for America's great intelligence agencies.
He said the confusion all from a single slip of the tongue.
In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't.
The president citing a one-word regret, despite the fact that he stood side by side Russian President Vladimir Putin without ever challenging him, even when asked, who does he believe?
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
Today,
the sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia.
Even with that cleanup, he still had a qualifier.
Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also.
Most in Washington outraged.
Yesterday, the president sided with the enemy who made an assault on our democracy.
And the criticism didn't just come from Democrats.
Vladimir Putin does not share our interests. Vladimir Putin does not share our values. They did interfere in our elections. It's really clear.
And it really better not happen again in 2018.
I remain astonished that the president would choose to believe the assertions by President Putin.
Even from his favorite cable news channel, Fox.
That's what made his performance disgusting. I'm sorry, it's just the only way I feel. It's not a right or left thing to me, it's just wrong.
We'll show you those voices hardly alone, but what I wanted to do for just a minute before we get into what happened in Helsinki, the consequences and everything that came along with it is, let's just take 1 minute before we assess the disastrous road trip, probably the worst since European vacation, and acknowledge what we already knew about the America that Donald Trump believes in. This is before he got on Air Force One to head across the pond. My president, he cages children. He demeans and he marginalizes people of color, faiths, ethnicities, even victims of sexual abuse. My president, he defends Nazis. He defends a pedophile and an enemy that attacked America. Somehow, that horrific bio, it got worse, much, much worse in the week that was. A draft dodger who insulted a war hero and Gold Star parents single-handedly did his best to undo alliances built over generations of spilled American and European blood and shared sacrifice. But this was just the hors d'oeuvre to the disgraceful performance that was Helsinki. We already knew President Trump admires despots like Duterte, Erdogan, Kim Jong-un, and of course his chief bromance, Putin. He calls the atrocities they carry out on their own people and the stifling of a free press, his words, strong leadership. Now, listen to what I say next without a shred of sarcasm. My president prefers dictators to democracies. Think about that for a minute. Somehow, all this B-movie bizarre narrative couldn't prepare us for a president trashing America on foreign soil. My president groveled like an obsequious lackey to a two-bit thug in live Technicolor. Can you imagine how pitifully degrading the scene must have been behind closed doors for 2 hours with those two leaders? Imagine what must have happened. Somehow, his Weasley performance today and the modified damage control impossibly made it even worse. My president's idea of making America great again, apparently, it depends on what Putin commands. So please wake me from this national nightmare. Tonight, along with my panel, I ask you, the people, to speak out. Maybe you don't agree with me. Maybe you're not as concerned as I am that we are witnessing American history being made of the worst variety. What do you want folks on Capitol Hill to do about it? Not just talk about it. What do you want them to do? What do you think Trump, inexplicably, why does he protect Putin at all costs? These, just a fraction of the questions that we in America find ourselves in tonight. So you see a number at the bottom of the screen. It's a toll-free phone number, and I invite you to be part of the program. 888-766-2428. Those lines are open as we speak. We'll be taking your calls a little bit later in the program, but there are other opinions on Trump's performance yesterday. We wanted to share reaction from around the globe as well as from right here at home. And for that, I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And Andrew, it's been universal, but it has been damning.
It's stunning, the level of both, the unanimity and just how striking some of the comments are about President Trump's performance in Helsinki yesterday. And let's begin this with some looks at front pages around the world today. The New York Daily News with the most provocative cover, Open Treason, showing Trump holding hands with Vladimir Putin while shooting Uncle Sam on Fifth Avenue. Ouch. The New York Post, owned by Rupert Murdoch, by the way, going with see no evil, Prez gives big bear hug to wicked BFF Vlad. The New York Times breaking format for a big headline at the top of page 1, Trump with Putin attacks 2016 intelligence. Around the world, the British Daily Mail, a wink, a handshake, and a U.S. president accused of treason. From the Netherlands, an EU and NATO nation, shock in U.S. after Trump betrayal is the translation. Haaretz from Israel, another close ally. Trump hazed America like a Putin's puppet. Back home to the U.S. in two papers from Pennsylvania, a key swing state in 16, this year, and 2020. The Times-Tribune from Northeast Pennsylvania united in outrage as it lists lawmakers and their comments bashing Trump. And finally, the Philadelphia Daily News. Here, grab my ball. See, Vlad's puppet does whatever he demands. Now to some notable political reactions. Normally, we would show you what both Democrats and Republicans are saying, but there's really not much need for the Democrats tonight, except for one, former Obama CIA Director John Brennan. He wrote on Twitter, Donald Trump's press conference performance in Helsinki rises and exceeds the thresholds of high crimes and misdemeanors. It was nothing short of treasonous, he continues. Not only were Trump's comments imbecilic, he is wholly in the pocket of Putin, Republican patriots, where are you? Let's find out where they are. Here's Mitch McConnell.
Ways over the last few years, the annexation of Crimea, the invasion of eastern Ukraine, not to mention the indisputable evidence that they tried to impact the 2016 election. So make no mistake about it, I would say to our friends in Europe, we understand the Russian threat, and I think that is the widespread view here in the United States Senate among members of both parties.
The Senate Majority Leader trying to reassure worried nations in Europe. Next, Tennessee's retiring senator and frequent Trump critic Bob Corker.
Everyone who's dealt with Putin understands fully that the best way to deal with him is through strength. And I just felt like the president's comments made us look as a nation more like a pushover. And I was disappointed in that. Well, I don't think President Trump gained anything, so I thought it was a bad day for our country.
From Bob Corker to another frequent Trump critic from the Senate GOP, Jeff Flake.
If that is what victory looks like, as the White House said, I think we all like to know what failure looks like in a summit. That was just a shameful performance. It really was.
There has also been reaction to the president's performance in Helsinki, somewhat surprisingly from a place you might not expect, Fox News. Here's Shep Smith yesterday.
Shameful, disgraceful, treasonous. 3 of the descriptions of what President Trump did today in Helsinki. First, from the Fox News deck, asked whether he believes American intelligence or the Russian thug standing next to him, President Trump declined to stand up for his own people and instead embraced Vladimir Putin.
And one final clip to play, this from Fox News and Fox Business host Neil Cavuto yesterday.
This was the time and the place for the president to look Putin squarely in the eye and said, you will be punished for what you did in 2016 and don't ever think about doing that again.
But he didn't. And that's what made it disgusting. That's what made his performance disgusting. I'm sorry, it's just the only way I feel. It's not a right or left thing to me, it's just wrong. A U.S. president on foreign soil talking to our biggest enemy or adversary or competitor, I don't know how we define them these days, is essentially letting the guy get away with this and not even, offering a mild criticism. That sets us back a lot.
And let's add the analysis of tonight's panel to the voices. We've got the perfect folks here tonight. Gian-Carlo Persuti, former aide to President George H.W. Bush, and Andrew, who you just heard from. The predecessor to your old boss stood up for NATO. He went after Russia. He ordered them to tear down the wall. Your boss fought and was a decorated veteran and put his country on the line. I can only imagine what Reagan from his grave and your old boss today must be saying about the work that they put into and what they saw in Helsinki.
Yeah. Well, and I would add, speaking of President Bush 41, he was also the director of the CIA. Yep. And he frequently tells the story of when he took over that job, his chief mission was to raise the morale in an American institution where it had been decimated. And that was his first order of business, and he is beloved to this day in that building, so much so that when I worked for him, they named it after him. And so, just apart from being a former president of the United States, he's a former director of the CIA. He's a former chief of the men and women that the President of the United States on foreign soil chose to ignore, denigrate, marginalize, whatever word you want to use it. I mean, it is horrifying.
And Gian-Carlo, his own people, intentionally, I believe, on the days leading up to the Helsinki summit, went out of their way. Dan Coates, Bolton, I mean, folks that I don't always agree with here, okay? They went out of their way publicly to confirm the non-disputable intelligence that said this directly goes to not only Putin, but Putin's apparatus at the GRU, which was basically the intelligence arm of the KGB that was involved in all this. They made it clear it's those guys. For Trump, with all that as a backdrop of his own appointees, to go what he did and to trash America on foreign soil is just I'm sorry, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there has to be a reason. There's not a constituency of Russian supporters, even among his base.
We spent a lot of time in the aftermath of this debacle talking about why. To me, the why is irrelevant. The why, we're past the why. Arguably the most famous oath in America is the oath that the President of the United States takes upon his inauguration to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I am waiting for someone, anyone, to make a reasoned argument as to how this current president can still execute those duties in light of what happened in Finland a couple days ago. I just don't know. He has proven on the world stage that he is incapable of protecting our country from a very real, verified foreign threat. He has abdicated that responsibility.
And Andrew, we did it off the top, but let's give a context. Apparently, the president was really pleased with his performance when he walked off the stage. And again, we don't know what happened the 2 hours behind closed doors with he and Putin, and I shudder to think about that conversation. But nonetheless, he walks off and he's pleased as punch with himself, and apparently gets on Air Force One. Forget the ashen staff of his that saw what just happened. Apparently they didn't tell him what they really thought. All of a sudden he turns on the tube and he goes from channel to channel to channel. And even loyal surrogates that he thought in Republican circles and on Fox News are saying the things that we played for him. And he went apoplectic. He couldn't understand. So then finally comes what was supposed to be a mea culpa. And it wasn't even a modified hangout. He couldn't even stick to the script. They showed the papers where he amended it. No collusion, and it wasn't just the Russians, it was other people. He couldn't even stick to script to say, Russia bad, us good.
This is, without a doubt, the stickiest moment of the Trump administration thus far.
Even what's in Charlottesville,
This is more dangerous to his presidency than Charlottesville was. And his comments were further afield from where Americans stand than his comments after Charlottesville were. So today was his opportunity to walk it back, and he had to because of the amount of heat that he was taking for the whole thing. First he says, well, I do believe my intelligence services, they say it was Russia, but it could have been other countries. So in the very same sentence, he contradicts himself and again throws the intelligence community under the bus again. The other thing is, he now claims that it was just a misspoken word, that he said that I can't see any reason why they wouldn't have done it, or as opposed to would have done it, or something like that. I challenge you. Go back and watch the clip that he said when he gave that answer yesterday when he was standing next to Putin. It's the one where he said that Putin gave an answer of great strength and power during the whole thing. There is nothing in that response that indicates that it was a slip of the tongue or that there was something off on what he said in one word, which is what he claimed today. The entire content of what he said was fawning on Trump or fawning on Putin and basically throwing our intelligence services under the bus and saying that it wasn't Russia, that he didn't believe it was Russia. The entire thing. So for him to come forward today and say, I misspoke one word, how stupid does he believe the American people are? How stupid does he believe his base is? And if you're a Trump voter, he's trying to throw that fastball, that 50-mile-an-hour fastball past you, and you're going to let it happen? I mean, he is playing you for a fool.
I agree. And, you know, we can debate if why is important anymore. To me, this never made sense. The most narcissistic person I've ever thought, and I've said this for 2 years now, why the one person he protects is the one person offers him no political value. It just never made sense, that calculation to me. And unfortunately, I think what we saw in Helsinki only doubles down. All right, when we come back after the break here, we're going to talk about what should happen next. We've seen voices, and we intentionally showed you, it's not just Democrats who called foul on this today, and worse than that, it was others too. But should it just be words, or should it be actions too, and what kind of actions? And I want to hear from you. Toll-free number, it's open right now. We're going to show you the phone number. There it is. So what do you think here? What do you want to see Capitol Hill do? What was your reaction to what you heard from Helsinki and again today? Those calls and more straight ahead.